thank you all for being here. My name is Tom O'Rourke. I'm the president of the Foxborough River Regional Chamber. It's great to see a nice full house here this morning at the Mass Association of Realtors, and I want to thank them for letting us use their space. It's really, I think, an excellent venue for this type of a meeting, so appreciate their support. I think everyone had a chance to grab something to eat. If not, there's a little more back there. There's still some coffee and juice if you need anything. Restrooms are also in the back if you should need that. But other than that, we'll get going here. I want to thank our sponsors of today's program, the Bank of Canton and the Brigham and Women's Healthcare Center at University Station. Thank you for your support. We appreciate that. And just quickly introduce our guests. We have from the town of Sharon, Fred Turkington. From the town of Walpole, Jim Johnson. From Foxborough, Paige Duncan. Town of Norwood, Tony Rizzuto. And from Canton, Charlie Doody. I want to thank you all for joining us today, taking some time to meet with the business community and share some of what's going on in our communities. And there's quite a bit going on across the state and within each of our communities in the Foxborough River region. So I think it would be interesting to hear from each of you, your perspective on what you see happening in the towns. And we'll give you each about 5 or 10 minutes to talk a little bit, and then we'll open it up to all of you for questions. And that'll be it. So without further ado, Fred, you want to kick us off?
Sure.
Thank you.
In Sharon, we are preparing for town meeting this time of year, and there are a number of major issues, some of which you've probably read about in the paper. The chief among it, you'll hear from all of us about it, is the state mandate to provide zoning options for multifamily housing, predominantly near MBTA rail stations. In Sharon, because of the layout of the train station down in the valley and Goose Hill Reservation being to the west, most of the area that we're planning to zone for this is currently a mixed-use zone, a business plus some residential area. Like a lot of communities, though, that the law doesn't seem to fit in the sense that we don't have sewer, so we're not going to have people, developers come and buying 4 or 5 houses and try to put up a 4-story apartment building.
Fred, can you not use the mic?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just in the back, it's a little tough.
Sorry.
How's that, better? So we expect that not a lot of the housing will ultimately get built, but it'll provide at least the zoning as an overlay district to make it possible. And as some of my planning board members said, 20 years ago, we might not be able to contemplate whatever technology might allow for treatment of wastewater outside of a sewer system. So I guess you'd never say never, but I think we're trying to comply with the spirit of law in terms of what's available in the part of Sharon that might be suitable for mixed use, and we'll see how that goes. The other issues that we're facing in terms of budget, as you saw, state tax revenues have not hit projection for 7 or 8 straight months. I think there's going to be a real effort to constrain state spending. The governor's budget reduced our expectations for Chapter 70 school aid. Sharon embarked on providing full-day kindergarten as part of our school system last year with the understanding that typically that would then roll up and be part of the Chapter 70 form and basically pay a large share of that cost. We are among 88 communities that the governor moved into the minimum aid category, which means state aid only increases by $30 per pupil. For us, that's $105,000. We're expecting $1.4 million. So we have a significant budget gap. Our budget will come in around 3%. Many of you know we built a brand new high school, so the debt service on that plus Prop 2.5 means the tax increase will be 4.8% if we stay at Prop 2.5. And I don't think there's any appetite in the community or at the Finance Committee to even propose a number higher than that. So the school department has a budget that I think lays off 8 or 10 employees, mostly in they call middle management, assistant principals, not direct classroom services, but certainly impacting how school services are delivered. Our voters last fall approved a water treatment plant to treat PFAS in our water. That plant is in design and about ready to begin bidding for construction. We're paying for that, thankfully, with some timely help. Our ARPA money that we received from the COVID relief from the federal government. We got an earmark from Congressman Auchincloss among, I think, 5 or 6 other towns that had water treatment issues in his district. All pegged at the same dollar amount. I don't think it has any relation to whose plant costs more, but we got $3.6 million for that, and we're taking advantage of a state no-interest loan program to try and minimize the impact on ratepayers. But even with that, we're looking at a 12% water increase and water rates starting next month. There's a couple of governance issues on the warrant that might be of interest. We had a governance study committee that went through our bylaws and made recommendations, and the last 2 or 3 are being brought to this town meeting. One is the ability to recall an elected official under certain circumstances. Another would allow the select board to remove members of boards and committee for the same circumstances, which would be malfeasance in office, basically absenteeism, not coming to board meetings, refusing to resign, those sorts of things. And we also have a revision of our personnel bylaw to bring it into the 21st century. It hadn't been modified since the late 80s, so there's a lot of archaic language, no recognition of all the advances that have been made in HR, everything from ADA to parental leave. So that's all being updated as part of our town meeting warrant. The gallery project, some of you will have questions about. Costco is completing the permitting, and I expect there'll be shovels in the ground in the next 2 months. With that, the developer is doing a spec building that has 24 apartments on the 2nd floor and mixed-use space below that. He fully expects with construction that will trigger a number of tenants that have been talked about over the years joining the project. Once it's clear, there'll be traffic in and out. The road improvements are just about done at the intersection, aligning Shaw's Plaza with the entrance to the gallery and the Point apartment complex. So that's a general overview of where things are in Sharon. I'm happy to take questions after.
Hey everybody, Jim Johnson, Town of Walpole. Thanks for having us here today. So in Walpole, we've been busy. We continue to be busy. I went back and looked at what our growth was from about 19 to 22, and we added about 530 housing units in the downtown district between Pennington Crossing, which is the old Walpole Woodworkers, 95 West Street, and Liberty Village, which is those cluster right there. We're looking to add about 410 new units between the Summer Street project in South Walpole, right on the Foxborough line, and where the old Gilmore's was. They're looking to add about 142 units right there. So we continue to be busy, along with some of our smaller projects, like where the old Leo's Pizza is. They're adding about 18 to 25 units right there. If you drive by Route 1A, you're going to see all the building going up right there. And I got my coffee earlier this morning, and I'm amazed every morning when I go there just how tall that building is getting in a generally small area where there aren't tall buildings around there. On the town side, we are working our way through the construction of a middle school, which is set to open in the fall. Price tag on that one's about $115 million, with the state picking up about 40% of that. So we're busy there. On the town side, also, we're looking to build an addition about $40 million within our levy limit, so no Proposition 2.5 for the high school. And we're going out to bid with that probably in the summer. I'm pretty confident we're going to be able to do some form or another onto the high school. The last time any addition was done was back in 97, 99, and they renovated the whole building. So we continue to be busy on the town side. For town meeting, we have a really small town meeting. It's only about 14 articles, which about 3 or 4 of them are no action whatsoever. It's probably the smallest one besides the COVID year in my tenure in 20 years in Walpole, so that's good for us. Schools are looking for a modest increase of about 3.8%. If you ask them, they need about 5 to 5.5%, which we're just not going to be able to get them there, but they understand. Commercial and industrial downtown, we continue to be busy. If you've driven through, Tessie's Bar is just about to be opened in time for St. Patrick's Day this weekend. Everybody's worried about that. That's the biggest. Are you gonna have them open? So, no, we're not gonna miss that deadline. So that's gonna actually be opened, and they're gonna get their CO today, I was told. So we just continue to be busy, as everybody else. We're dealing with. I'm concerned, obviously, at the state level, what's happening with migrants. Walpole is one of the few towns around this general area that we don't have to deal with it. Both of our hotels haven't opened their doors to migrants for whatever reason. I'm not completely clear as to why. I was told by one of the hotel owners that if we open it up, we get steady revenue for 6 months, but we have to renovate it and cost us double to renovate it for the damage, and we're closed for probably 6 months. So that's a good thing on our end that we haven't had to deal with, but unfortunately my colleagues up here have. MBTA communities is obviously a hot topic in Walpole. Our overlay district is going to be centrally focused right in the downtown. Unlike some of the other towns up here, I haven't gotten much pushback or much interest in it in Walpole, because quite frankly, it was going over a district that we'd have to knock everything down and build these 1,500 new units, which just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but the state's forcing us to do it. We don't have any choice on this one, and that's basically where I'm going to tell town meeting. Do this, or we'll be like Milton. The Attorney General will take us to court, start suing us. She's asking Milton to go to the Supreme Court, and I don't know if Milton's going to go along with that, but I know Rentham's is going to push back on this too. So it'll be interesting to sit back and see what happens in some of these other communities. So with that.
Hi, I'm Paige Duncan. I just was appointed in January as the official town manager for Foxborough. For the past 8 years, I've been the director of land use and economic development. Sadly, I'm still the land use and director, so if anybody knows someone looking for a position, that's one of the things I will say we're dealing with, and I don't know if my colleagues are, but hiring into town hall has been very challenging. Getting candidates, it's a great job. I'm not on the stump for this, but it really is a great job. It pays well, and I'm amazed at the dearth of candidates we're seeing. And we're at the point now where we're seeing employees being poached right out from under us. I mean, another town got our payroll clerk and offered $20,000 more. I mean, we can't compete with that. So we're really struggling to fill these good jobs, and we're seeing that, it used to be that folks wanted to come work for the government, and we're not seeing that quite as much. We don't offer the flexibility of remote work. And I just don't know if what the reason is behind it, but we definitely are challenged. Our budget we do okay, of course. That said, I was not able to recommend any new positions in town hall or in town-wide this year. So we were able to hold status quo. And I know, I live in Franklin, and they're looking at a $10 million override. I know a lot of colleagues are dealing with the same. So we're getting ready to go into contract negotiations, and I know the unions expect big bumps. I mean, cost of living has gone up, and yet we're seeing projections, and we're seeing our revenues sort of flatten. So it's concerning. I think the next year will be a challenge. So that's all the fun stuff I'm learning on the town manager side. I never used to have to worry about any of this. But otherwise, Foxborough's doing great. AAA community, very stable. We have our Route 1. We encourage everybody to take a look at our Route 1 zoning. We allow by right, many by right uses. We allow heights up to 70 feet by right, which is rare out here. We're getting ready for World Cup. That's a very exciting process. I have my first meeting with World Cup Boston. I think it's Monday the 25th. So we've been actually fighting hard for that because they call World Cup Boston, but last I checked, it's in Foxborough. So we're afraid, between the state and Boston, we're kind of at the end of the line going, don't forget us, it's going to be our impact. So we're really trying to make sure we get a seat at the table. But the economic development from World Cup, and that's why a planner would be very wise to come here, because it's a fun project as a planner. But World Cup is going to be very interesting. Having been through Army, Navy, that was just a small snapshot. World Cup is something that we can't even fathom. So we're getting ready for that. In exciting news, Foxborough has the opportunity to perhaps purchase a community center. There's a church in town that went up for sale for a reasonable $1.55 million. We're in the bidding war right now, but we had tabled a community center because it would cost upwards of $15 million, and we're getting ready to build a new DPW building. We have a school project, and Foxborough doesn't really do a lot of overriding, and we paid for our town hall and one of our school projects within the debt services in our operating budget. I don't recommend that. It's interesting. We're in the midst of that right now, hoping that we can secure this community center. That would be a major win for the community. It's a 17,000 square foot building that's ready to go. It's a phenomenal opportunity that literally fell in our lap last month. So if you haven't been to Foxborough lately, check us out. Uptown Foxborough is really booming. We have Shoveltown Brewery. And a big part of this, and again, my residents would not agree, is the housing that came along with it. We approved 50 units next to the post office, and those are occupied. We have 19 units associated with the former fire station. So we've seen the market change uptown as we've had people move in. And yet, most people are like, oh, we don't want to change the uptown. It's like, yeah, but uptown isn't going to be what you remember from the 50s and 60s. We have to evolve. So that's been a message. People still hate the housing, but they love the bakery. They love the cheese shop. They love the ice cream store. They love all that. So Jim mentioned migrants. We do have a migrant hotel. We have about 300 newcomers to town, and that is something we've managed to deal with. I can't tell you the hate emails I get once a week about it, because it's all on me. I did this, but it's frustrating, and I get it. It's a very political. When Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump are posting about how veterans can't come for Army Navy because of the illegal aliens have taken over our town, that was awesome. What we're grappling with this year is budgeting for next year. We know that we're getting paid for these we call them newcomers. The newcomers through the school program, $104 per day per student, but we don't know what's going to happen next year. And we think that they've added somewhere between 10 and 19 new employees at the school side to accommodate, to deal with. So, do we carry these folks? Do we not? Do they get layoff notices in June? What happens? So we're grappling with that. MBTA communities, we also have MBTA communities problem where we have to adopt zoning to allow 1,152 units. That was just upgraded. We were an adjacent community, and I was a big supporter of our commuter rail station. Karen Dumaine can attest to that. But now that we have a commuter rail station, we went from an adjacent community to commuter rail community, and that added 5% to our requirements. So people love that. And they're all like, can we cancel the train station? No, we can't. So we're grappling with that. In all honesty, I will be shocked if Foxborough passes MBTA communities. We're doing everything we can to get it passed, but I couldn't even get accessory apartments for non-related individuals passed after a 2-year conversation on housing. So I'm going to be shocked if MBTA communities passes, but we're going to do everything we can to try to comply. We've been told they expect you to go back to town meeting numerous times, so that's awesome. Again, looking for a planner who's willing to take this job on, because town manager doesn't want to do it anymore. Also PFAS, we're building a $14 million plant paid for through SRF loans. We're looking to complete our state hospital project. Believe it or not, we have one little bit left, and we're going to be, hopefully after town meeting, putting out to bid the former assembly hall / auditorium for housing, and then also putting out some land to allow an assisted living facility. So that would be an exciting process, and it would complete our state hospital campus. I already mentioned Route 1. We're busy trying to spend all our ARPA money. The county has us on a tight leash where they want us to get everything done, and understandably so, but we're frantically working to ensure we comply with all those requirements. We have a really cool tourism effort. If nobody's seen it, it's called Visit FPW, Foxborough, Plainville, Rentham. We've gotten hundreds of $1,000s in grant money from Plain Ridge Park and Mass Gaming Casino. So we've used, rather than mitigation money, to mitigate effects of the tourism, of the casino, which we've had none really. We're using it to try to leverage economic development to support the casino, because we think, we have over 20 million visitors a year, pre-COVID, coming to the region between the Rentham Outlet Mall and Patriot Place, Gillette Stadium. So and a lot of them come for the day. They stay in Boston, they take a bus out to the outlets, and they go right back to Boston. We want them to come out to this region. So if you haven't checked out our website, it's visitfpw.com. I guess that's about it. We're busy in Foxborough, but call me if you have any economic development, but hopefully it won't be me forever. So if you know a planner, please send them my way. Thank you.
Thank you, Paige. Tony Mizuko, I'm the town manager for the town of Norwood. Before I start, I want to point something out. Last year, if you were here, I made fun of my colleague, Charlie. It was his first year as a town manager, and he was wearing the great suit. He was dressed to the nines. He walked in, you're like, man, what company, what Fortune 500 company does he run? And I predicted he'd come in without a tie the following year, and he did. So this year, same thing with Paige. What company are you running? The company of Foxborough. So another year or two, we'll all be up in here in jeans and hoodies. And I wore this exact same vest last year because I want to make sure when Tom takes a picture, I look the same every year. I think I was there and Bill Keegan was here last year. But Anyway, thank you for having me here. A couple of things going on in Norwood. Moderna continues to expand. It seems like we say that every year, but construction has not stopped up there. They just finished construction on what I call their freezer plant. It's much more complicated than that. It holds all of their samples from their cancer trials that they do throughout the country. So it's a very complicated facility, but really it's a giant freezer plant. It's an example of where we had changed a significant amount of our zoning to allow them to construct a building like that. They're continuing the renovations of their other facilities there. They haven't even started on renovating the mansion and their new facility yet because there's just so much construction going on. What's important about Moderna is they're going to make Norwood their sort of global training center. And that relates to the other big project we have going on in town, which is FM Global. If you're familiar with the Four Points Hotel in Norwood, the Four Points, what was the building next to it, the building in the rear, and the Dedham Medical Associates buildings are all owned by FM Global. And they don't just own the property, they own the business with the Four Points as well. They've torn down their office building there along Route 1, and they're building a $500 million, 400,000 square foot new facility, and Norwood is one of their 3 global training facilities, or one of their 3 global facilities. FM Global is a global company. They're a Fortune 500 company. They are going to have 3 key facilities in the world when they're done with this project: London, Singapore, and Norwood. So I absolutely say we are on the same level as London and Singapore. If you Google, the best way to do is just Google FM Global Norwood project, and you will see what this building looks like. It is going to redefine what Route 1 looks like. It's been a process we've been moving towards for several years to sort of move away from being the auto mile to being either the biotech mile or the Fortune 500 mile. We're looking to do more projects like this down the road. About 5 years ago, we changed our Route 1 zoning. Well, started about 5 years ago. As everyone knows, zoning changes take a lot of time and effort to go through the process, but we specifically were targeting redevelopment like this. Because we made that change in zoning, FM was able to make their rebuild their facility here. They're building a large parking garage with it. They're going to be moving their C-suite here, which is a joke that I always tell them that they're doing that, and they say, hee, no, we're not. Their CEO lives in Westwood and commutes to Johnston, Rhode Island. He is not going to continue to commute to Johnston, Rhode Island, where they have a facilities testing project or facilities product testing or something like that. He's not going to drive by a $500 million building and then go to Johnston, Rhode Island. He's coming here. FM has also leased the old Analog Devices building. They dumped $30 million into it just for a 3-year lease to temporarily move their staff, with a provision that they would have to return the building to its original condition. Now, it was already Class A office space before they dumped $30 million into it. What that $30 million went into is beyond me, but I'll take the building permit and the construction. But reason to believe that they're going to maintain that facility permanently for some of their back office functions, so that their CEO can work out of the brand new building. They've always done a lot of their training out of here, bringing in a lot of their engineers from around the world. This is going to cement Norwood as their global training facility. So we're quickly becoming a destination for biotech and Fortune 500 companies to do a lot of their training here in Norwood. And FM moves their engineers and their folks around the world quite a bit. Their facilities in Europe and Southeast Asia really cater to those regions where some of the building materials that they need are specific to the area. But I happen to be in Singapore over around November, and there were engineers from Norwood in Singapore. So they're always moving their folks around, but they're mainly doing their training here. It's one of the reasons why, if you've been to the Four Points, the hotel is very successful. There's a lot of conferences there. It's a great hotel, great restaurants, but FM uses it. Probably a quarter of their business is their own staff having to go through in their own training facility. So that benefits the hotel. It benefits the economic growth in the area. That's really our largest project. We're moving along with a lot of infrastructure work, and I want to talk about that for a second. If you are not an MWRA community, and you ever hear about your community looking into joining the MWRA, I can tell you it's always worth it. The Quabbin, which is our source of water, doesn't have PFAS issues. We don't need to build a PFAS treatment plant. We have an unlimited supply of water, and our sewer treatment capacity is virtually unlimited. Norwood's fortunate that anywhere along Route 1 and virtually anywhere in the community, we can bring whatever amount of water or sewer that you need. We own our own electric company, which helps us from a business development standpoint, because we can bring legitimately whatever type of business, whatever type of electric needs you have, we can bring right to your site because we control that. We also own our own broadband company, and that provides a couple of benefits to the town. One being, if you're a Norwood broadband subscriber, you get cheaper internet service than you do with Comcast or Verizon. You get better quality service. We're in the process of starting a $12 million fiber to the premises upgrade of our broadband plant, which is going to sort of launch us into the next 20 years of providing internet service. We have about 40% of the market in Norwood. We have about 60% plus of the business market. So Moderna uses our broadband, FM Global uses our broadband. So what we're able to compete with is companies that we're able to provide service to Fortune 500 companies. It also provides a benefit to the residents who don't use it, because it sort of keeps Comcast and Verizon on their toes, because they know that there's another option. They know that they have to invest. It's tough for us because our Comcast and Verizon subscribers tend to get the best technology first, because they know that they actually have a competitive market here. So even if you're not on Norwood broadband, even though that saddens me, it's keeping Verizon and Comcast honest. It's keeping their prices reasonable as well, because they know that they have competition. We're also doing our 3A zoning. We'll actually have town meeting next week, and it'll probably go 1 or 2 nights. We've moved in the last couple of years. This is the first year where our town meeting has been broken into 3 sections. We've been slowly doing that over a couple of years. We used to just try to do everything in May. David Luca from Murphy Hesse is here, has been with the town for many years, knows May would be a 5 or 6 night slog where we would have to get through the budget. We would try to get through land use. We would try to get through a capital plan. And by nights 4 or 5, people are just not interested. They're not happy. You have people that want to talk about something. Nobody wants to talk about buying a fire truck after 4 nights of town meeting. So we've broken it up. We do our capital in the fall. We do our regular budget in May, and now we're trying to do land use just in March, because there's a lot of, land use is complicated. So rather than trying to say, okay, do we want to build a new community center and do we want to rezone, we've said we're going to do our land use in March. It's all we're going to focus on. That's all this town meeting is we've got 5 or 6 land use articles. 3A's going to be a little contentious as we look to pass something in Norwood. I don't think there's an opposition to doing anything. I don't think we're going to fight it. Most people have agreed that we need to do something. It's a little different for Norwood. We already have 5,500 rental units in town, plus 600 units of public housing. In terms of transit-oriented development, which is the goal, we built Windsor Gardens 60 years ago, which is a 940-unit apartment complex on a train stop. So when the rest of the world is saying we need to build housing around train stops, Norwood's sort of saying, well, all right, we'll go back to what we did 60 years ago and look at it. Half of our zone is going to be that Windsor Gardens. It is an older apartment complex. We do want to increase the density, increase the height there. It works for the town for a lot of reasons. One, it's pretty much hidden from view, so people get concerned about the height of buildings. You're not going to see necessarily the height of it. We also want to create a situation where the owner can reinvest in the property and get new units out of it, because it is an older complex. And at some point, while we want the next 500 housing units to come into town, and we need to look at that, I'm also concerned about the existing 5,500 units and what we're doing to maintain the quality of our housing stock. That being said, we may not finish it this March. We may need to kick it back to the planning board to make a couple of changes, but we've been working at it for a little bit over a year. And there's a recognition in Norwood that we do need to have more housing. That being said, I think everyone knows building 500 or 600 more units in Norwood is not going to drop the price of a house or an apartment by $1. That being said, it is a state law. I think Fred or Jim mentioned it. Kudos to the town of Milton for doing what they think is right, but we've realized that this is not going to have that big of an impact on us. We've got other projects we want to do down the road, so we're looking at just finding a way to comply, get some good out of it, make it work for us, and then move on down the road. We've got to look at our public housing stock is getting a little bit older in Norwood, and the board has approved one LIP, which is like a friendly 40B for a small redevelopment in Norwood. It's only 8 or 10 units. We've got about a 30-unit one coming up. If anyone's familiar with Norwood, next to the Honeydew, there's been a sort of abandoned old garage there. That's going to become a small little project, and we're actually looking to do in the next 5 years probably 4 or 5 or 6 more of those smaller projects. If you're not that familiar with Norwood, we are an old mill town. We're an old mill town that doesn't look like an old mill town because the town has put a lot of money over the last 40 or 50 years into its redevelopment and into its infrastructure. But we still have some of these older industrial and commercial properties lying around that need to get redeveloped, and they're not going to become newer commercial properties. Lennox Street in Norwood is an example of one of our other 3A zones. It's an old industrial corridor. Certainly we'd rather commercial and industrial growth than just residential growth, but the reality is it's an old industrial corridor that's not going to be new industry. The new industry is moving towards, we have Moderna obviously, but is moving towards Route 1. And we do have some migrant families in town. They did take over the state did release the Holiday Inn in Norwood. It hasn't really been that big of an impact. There's only about 60 families there. We had told the state ahead of time they shouldn't do it because this hotel owner's been difficult to work with. Come to find out the hotel owner's difficult to work with, but there's only about 65 families, 20 children. North Attleboro actually had these families before us, so we were fortunate that we didn't have to deal with the initial, okay, they're here, they're literally coming off a bus or out of a processing center and don't have diapers and clothing or anything like that. North Attleboro was able to take care of all that. The state moved them here. North Attleboro schools added 1 position So I told my superintendent, you are allowed one position that North Attleboro did. Don't start asking for 5 or 10, because that's what they'll do. They'll say, we need 9 people. Well, they did it with 1. You can do it with 1. I think I've added 4 positions in general government in 6 years, and the school department's added something like 60. But that's just how education goes. And then I'll just close with Norwood Hospital. I think, as everyone knows, Norwood Hospital is still closed. I am confident that the hospital will be rebuilt. It will reopen. I don't think it's going to be Stewart. I've made it clear that I think I would prefer probably the Taliban over Stewart running the hospital at this point. I was there the night the hospital shut down. I will be there when we cut the ribbon. What I suspect is happening because we all know behind the scenes, Stewart's looking at some sort of an exit. They're going to want to make sure that it's in their financial interest to exit the market in Massachusetts or try to stick around. They're angling for more health insurance money from the state or more reimbursement money from the state. I don't think the state's going to do that. I think the state's going to wait for Stewart to go out, and then they're going to have to readjust some of these numbers. I mean, if you think a lot of community hospitals were sort of struggling, and then now a private company comes in, sells the land to a real estate trust, and now they've got to pay a huge rent payment. If they were struggling before, they're going to continue to struggle. But that insurance mix that a hospital gets, it's no different than our ambulance service. If you're more private pay, you're going to make a lot more money. We're about 70-30 in our ambulance service in terms of private pay versus public, Medicare and Medicaid. And I can tell you that generates $2.5 million for my ambulance service a year. If that flipped, if we were 70% private, we'd be making money on the ambulance service, probably make money in the whole fire department. So contacts I have at the state and some of the statewide nursing unions have all said that the conversations are ongoing, and Norwood's actually likely to be sort of the shining penny of any deal. If you're a current hospital operator, any hospital you buy, you have to buy that facility. You have to deal with an old facility. You have to deal with existing contracts. With Norwood Hospital, you have the ability to come in, finish the deal, design it the way you want, put in what services you want, create what contracts you want, and sort of start fresh. So it'll be the first ground-up hospital built in the Commonwealth in more than probably 25 years. So we're looking forward to it. It's just going slower than it's been, slower than we want. But at some point, Stewart's going to exit the market. Somebody else will own it. They'll finish it. The state's hospital system is collapsing. It started when Norwood Hospital closed, so we like to take a little credit for that. But with the closure of a hospital in Brockton, we are sort of at a crisis point with ERs and hospitals. And really, there's nothing going on in the state right now. So if you think we're at a crisis point in, for all intents and purposes, what's a good time? What if we actually did have an actual statewide disaster or another pandemic or some sort of an emergency that required hundreds or thousands of people to be hospitalized? We can't handle day-to-day business. So Norwood Hospital will come back. The state needs the hospital capacity. If you think of a hospital trying to go somewhere else where they haven't gone through permitting and they haven't done any of their pro formas, that's a decade or more away. So it's just a matter of time and waiting. It's been frustrating. It's costing towns time and money. Our EMS services are stretched, but there'll be a new hospital there. There has to be, and we're confident that'll happen. It's just waiting out the game of somebody to come in and buy, and I'm sure Stewart is just playing the back and forth of trying to get the best deal they can get to get out of the state or try to convince the state to give them a little bit more money and leverage that some way, but there'll be a hospital there at some point. I think that's about it for Norwood. Turn it over to Canton, where nothing interesting's been going on.
Not much happening. Things are quiet, which is great. Good time to be a town administrator. This is my second year, and I have learned how to appropriately dress for different occasions, thanks to my mentor here in Norwood, which is great. A few things. I also forgot my glasses, so all my notes I can't read, so I'm going off the top of my head with this. All right, thank you. Any golfers in the room? Golfers? People like to golf? I like to golf. I'm not good at it, but you may or may not know Topgolf has arrived in Canton and has opened its doors as of November. It is a smashing success. It's banged out every day. It's a three-level building, multiple hitting bays, over 100 hitting bays, restaurants, bars, TV, sports, all kinds of good stuff going on there. So if you do want to go there, I suggest you go on to the website 7 days in advance, because that's how long it takes to actually reserve a hitting bay. So they're doing great things, and they brought over 400 jobs to the community, in addition to the meals tax that we're going to gain from that too. So it's been a great project. It's on Dedham Street, in the vicinity of University Ave, and that development in there in Westwood. So I encourage you to try to visit that. Canton is also home of the Paul Revere Heritage Park. If you're familiar with Canton, Plymouth Rubber, it's the former Plymouth Rubber site, which was an industrial site. They made tape. It smelled lovely in the morning, but it has now been converted to a beautiful green space. They preserved the Paul Revere copper rolling mill in museum. The rolling mill is now a meeting space and the site of a restaurant called the Northern Spy. I encourage you to try that out. It's excellent. And the museum is currently being built out. So the trust is in the final phase of building the museum. They're going for some appropriation at town meeting this year so they can finish that project, and we're looking forward to that, bringing some more folks to the region. But the green space is beautiful. There are walking trails, there's rivers, it's a really nice piece of property. So I encourage you to come by and visit that. In part of that project, there were 272 units built. They were all condominiums, with the exception of one over 55 building. And those units are beautiful as well, and they go very quickly. And the developer is quite happy because they went for far more money than they anticipated when they actually planned the project. So things are going well there. And one of the unique things that happened with the agreement with the developer and the town was that the developer agreed to convey a 2-bedroom condominium unit to the town, in which the town will then sell at market rate, and those funds will go to the newly created Affordable Housing Trust to help the town maintain its 10% affordable housing inventory. So it's kind of a unique situation. I have sympathy with my colleague from Foxborough because I now have become a realtor. So if anybody is interested in a beautiful 2-bedroom condominium at $599.9, you can give me a call, and I will take you through a tour through the unit. So we're looking forward to that, and that is actually, those funds will go to a great use with the Affordable Housing Trust that was created. So that's a good program. Canton just signed up for what's called Canton Electricity Choice. I don't know if you're familiar with municipal energy aggregation programs, but this is a program where Canton residents will be opted into a program where they'll be using green energy or greener energy. So we were able to sign a contract with a third-party vendor called Constellation Energy at about 13 cents per kilowatt hour. And currently, if you look at your Eversource bill, you're probably paying somewhere north of 17 cents. So we're going to be able to save the residents some money, which I think they'll be happy about. But in addition to residents, businesses are also eligible as well. So businesses that use large amounts of kilowatt hours can see significant savings with their energy bill. So that just happened yesterday, and that rollout will take about 60 days, and the kickoff of the program will be probably around June 1st. So we're looking forward to that as well. We have a new school proposed in Canton. The Galvin Middle School project is currently under review. So the schools will be going to a special town meeting in the fall to ask for money to build a $225 million middle school. It will be grades 5 through 8, and currently the Galvin Middle School is 6 through 8. But it's be a state-of-the-art school, and it will allow a lot of space to free up in the elementary schools because grade 5 will now go to a middle school. So we're hoping that goes well. Consultants have been hired, and plans are being drawn up, and hopefully the voters will support the project. We are doing a lot of things, as my colleagues are, preparing for the vote for MBTA zoning, town meeting, and so forth. And we're also trying to use up our opera funds with various infrastructure projects. Commissioner Stady is in the back of the room. Commissioner happens to be a Canton resident, and he is in my ear all the time about spending all the available funds. And I know, use it or lose it.
Gave some money yesterday. Good to see. Very happy Foxborough's on the bandwagon. All right.
We're working hard.
I know you are.
Well, thank you, Commissioner, and the Commission for all your support. That's about it. Well, everybody else knows what's going on in Canton, but that's the good stuff.
Thank you all. We appreciate that, and I think we've still got some time left for some questions, which I'm sure folks may have. So if anybody would like to ask a question, please chime in. They all did such a great job of covering everything. Nobody has any concerns. I had one question. I've noticed, unfortunately, Dedham couldn't be here today. And, excuse me, Chris Coleman from Westwood had planned to be here today, but he had a last-minute thing come up that prevented him from joining us. But I've noticed in Dedham, some of the redevelopment along Route 1 now is beginning to include a lot more housing along the corridor, and I think Norwood has zoned for some of that as well. Are any other of the Route 1 communities considering that type of development?
As far as Walpole's concerned, no. They've been primarily focused on vacant land that they can develop. The Summer Street project that I referenced was like 58 acres, and they bought, I feel like half of it at about $850,000. It was cheaper land. It was the old bird machine site, but no interest besides the preserve right here. That was 20 years ago, so.
We have to do it because of our train station is within a half mile. You know, it's close proximity to Route 1. So our 3A zoning is out on Route 1, which is something the town has never wanted, is housing on Route 1. So there we are.
Norwood zoned for it maybe 2-3 years ago. We haven't seen any hits along Route 1 because we don't have any space in Norwood. I mean, 10 square miles and you can't find space to build anything unless you're doing redevelopment. We haven't seen any interest yet. I suspect at some point as part of a larger redevelopment you'll see some, but the commercial properties are filled. The office parks are still having decent occupancy rates, so nobody's going to come in and just want to buy up commercial property and put in housing yet, but we suspect it'll happen. The argument was, why not allow it if people want to build there? We had some people say, well, nobody's going to want to live along Route 1. Is it for us to tell them to live or not live along Route 1, or if somebody wants to build and develop, we'll allow it to happen. So you can do it almost anywhere along Route 1 in Norwood. We just haven't seen any hits yet.
Yes.
Question for Walpole. What are the plans for the old FCI and the, I don't even know what the building is.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, the old prison spot.
Yes.
So, there are no plans.
Oh, there you
Every time we ask the state, no, I was concerned about that, and what are you gonna do with that property? It's about 2/3 in Walpole and 1/3 in Norfolk. I actually tried to get them to give it to me, or the ones I looked at it, and most of the land is surrounded by big walls, 20-foot walls. And they told me we have to send it off to the Division of Surplus, I forget what that's, DCAM. And we want to hold on to it for an asset in case Framingham closes down or Shirley. And there's $30 million worth of electrical upgrades that are needed alone. It has asbestos. So it's a big, I've asked Secretary Augustus, the new, used to be Department of Housing and Community Development, they changed the name, but he shrugged it off, he didn't want to answer the question. And they, no immediate plans. They took my select board meet for a tour through it. It's scary, it looks like a scene from The Walking Dead. But it's just kind of sitting there in limbo, and we have a beautiful $10-11 million fields facility right across the street from it that gets used all the time. So it's just sitting in limbo, so.
Thank you.
I have a question for the panel. What do they feel the likelihood is of the cancellation of the 1031 exchange exemption that is talked about on the political channels right now? Do you think that's something that's likely to happen? And how would that actually, I would assume that affect your tax revenue from commercial?
What exchange? Yeah, what exemption you for?
1031 exemption where you can exchange commercial property for one that's bigger in value. President Biden has proposed canceling it in his second term if he gets elected. In the past, you could do it between real estate and other assets, and that got canceled, and now it's only available for real estate. And when that got canceled, I think in the 90s, or so, if I'm not mistaken, it caused quite a bit of drop in asset value. So I wonder if actually he is reelected and he actually goes through with the 1031 cancellation. Well, you can't then exchange real estate. You have to sell it and take capital gain.
So I don't know that it would affect us, and here's why. Once our tax levy is set, we have a tax levy. That amount doesn't change; it gets spread over the tax base.
This is capital gain, not real estate tax.
Right. We don't collect capital gains tax, so whether you pay our capital gains or not has no impact on our revenue, because again, we only levy a property tax. So if the total value of property is $100 million, it doesn't matter what happens. That just gets spread out over the entire tax base. So paying or not paying capital tax is totally irrelevant to municipal government. It may have an impact on the state. We have nothing to do with that.
I have a follow-up on that though, but I mean, the real estate values will probably drop down. How would you assess your commercial real estate values? It's based on rental income to some degree, isn't it?
Correct, depending on the property.
Eventually that's going to affect your tax revenue.
So it does and it doesn't. Let me explain. We have a tax levy, so we levy a dollar amount on the total tax base. However, that tax base shrinks, it just spreads that same levy over the base. So the levy never goes down unless you do what's an underride, which doesn't happen. So if the tax levy is $100 million and we lose $20 million in commercial value, the tax levy is still $100 million. It just means everyone else is paying a little bit more. That's why Prop 2.5, we say taxes can't go up more than 2.5% a year. That's not true. Taxes can go up 30% a year. we can't increase the tax levy by more than 2.5% a year. And we've actually had a problem in Norwood the last 5 years. We've had residential value growth everywhere. Our commercial properties aren't growing in value very much. The residential properties are. On paper, the average assessed value in Norwood now is about 6.25. 5 or 6 years ago, it was 4.25. So what's happened is residential taxpayers have started to pay more in Norwood. It's not that we're taxing more. I mean, we're taxing a little more every year. It's just the portion of our tax base that's residential has grown and the commercial portion has shrunk. So in your case, if you start to see commercial values dropping in a community, the portion of their tax base that's commercial will shrink, the portion that's residential will grow, and the single-family home taxes will go up, even though it's not generating any additional revenue for the town.
Tony, I have a related question. Happy to be here. Very privileged to represent the town of Norwood. But the question for the panel relative to tax incremental financing plans. Is the focus for new building, new business, or are you open to existing businesses that want to renovate, want to expand? How are you handling the TIF agreements, one or the other? You want me to start that one?
Yeah, go ahead. So Norwood's done 3 TIFs. So just so everyone knows, a tax increment financing agreement is an agreement with a business to forego a portion of the growth in future taxes in exchange for significant economic development. We've done, Norwood has, I think, 10 or 15 of those we've done over the years. The last couple of years, we've done one with FM Global. We've done a couple with Moderna. It depends on the project, and every community is going to look at it and see whether it's in their value. And the problem is it can be a race to the bottom if somebody says, well, we want to renovate our hotel and add on a wing. That being said, it's probably not worth it for that company to really try to seek a TIF because you got to go through town meeting, you got to do a lengthy process. It's the increase in value that you're forgiving a portion of the taxes on. So if that increase is not great, you're not likely to see a benefit of doing it. We haven't set a floor in Norwood, but I can tell you if it was this building and they just wanted to do a small expansion, we'd probably say it's not big enough. There's also a job creation component. You need either the growth or the job creation. We take one or the other. FM's project, for instance, is not a, there's not a huge number of jobs being created by it or even realistically being retained, but they took a 70-year-old office building, tearing it down, and they're putting $500 million into the site. So in that case, we said, absolutely, this is a redevelopment that we would go ahead and do. It's up to each community to decide the size and scope and whether or not it's worth it. For a company like FM, do they really need the forgiving of some of their taxes over the next 20 years? No, but it is sort of an indication to a lot of companies that you're interested in growth and redevelopment and working with them. But that's just
so I can say on Walpole's side, we only have 2 TIFs and both of them are with Siemens. The most recent one was in 2015, and like Tony said, I never get approached and asked about it because it really has to be a large-scale project. Siemens was like a $300 million expansion. They wanted to forgive their taxes or pay less taxes on that expansion over 20 years, which we eventually agreed to. The state was on board. They gave them some significant tax incentives. They also got a $2.5 million MassDOT grant to improve the intersection near the Walpole Mall and everything. But it made sense for them to push it hard. It took us a long time. We had one town meeting just for this one article. It went on for 3 or 4 hours, a lot of debate. A lot of people felt like we were giving too much of a break to Siemens. The way I looked at it is we had a good company there. They were going to bring in, I think it was 450 jobs. They surpassed that. So it was important for Walpole, but we only have both of them with Siemens.
In Foxborough, we did ours, it was before I got here, but with Schneider Electric, and so that was an existing company, and we haven't been approached for a long time. We sometimes through the state you have to put forth proposals, associated with like the land over at Patriot Place, Gillette, and a lot of times we're competing with North Carolina and the other areas, so they want to know about TIFs. We just can't compete at the level of some of these other states. So we haven't attracted anybody, but the Schneider Electric absolutely paid off. We are now considered their sort of global, at least a North American hub. Although we are dealing with, Schneider Electric is closing their Neponset campus, so they are already closed, and they invested in Cohasset through the TIF. And we're actually getting ready, they're starting a year-long demolition project, and then they will be selling that land. So that's coming up, but I think we would consider both, but it would need to be at a certain level, and I think the taxpayers would be extremely suspect. It would take a lot of convincing. I think the company, which is what the Schneider, what used to be called the Foxborough Company, I think that had a special place in Foxborough residents' heart. I think they're a little cynical. I don't know that they're going to be, but maybe if we got one of Tony's awesome, we want this biotech to move down Route 1. If, you know, in Route 1 we're ready for it. It's by right use. You know, perhaps if it was a big enough proposal, we could use that as an enticement, but it would need to be a good one with clear benefits.
I will say your TIFs will build on each other. The first one we did with Moderna, it was, well, all right, they're taking an old building, and this company's moving out of Cambridge, and you know, maybe couldn't they afford it on their own? And the attitude at the time was, let's do this, let's rebuild the Polaroid campus. A couple years later, when Moderna came for another one, it was, well, now they're this big company, do we really need to do it? And we said, well, we did one, we wanted to encourage more growth. Now we're here to do another one, and we want to be ready for the next one. Then FM Global came in, and we had that same argument then. Well, they're a big company, why are you giving something away? We are trying to attract businesses and growth and development, and now we have a track record of doing it. So the next tip that comes along, people are going to say, does this company really need it? We did one for Moderna, and that worked out. We did one for FM Global, and that worked out. Let's keep going.
And I'll say in Canton, you know, the town has done, you know, several tips over the years. The last one I think was Reebok when they built their corporate headquarters in Canton, and that property has been occupied now by .32 Health, which is a nonprofit. It's the nonprofit wing of that company, and we were able to negotiate a pilot agreement there to reimburse the town for taxes that they wouldn't otherwise collect. I agree with Tony. I think that the size of the project is important, so Canton is not averse to future TIFs, but I think the type of business would play into it as well. So, you know, if we wanted to encourage biotech on Route 138 Dan Road area, I think the town would be more inclined to consider a TIF. But the last one we did, it was a fight, and it was a town meeting, a long town meeting discussion, but the town ultimately decided to grant Reebok a TIF.
I forget which one of you had said about the housing situation coming in, that the influx wasn't going to be necessarily a big deal, so to speak. But I mean, all of our towns are between probably 10 to 20,000 residents. Adding on 1,000 units is upwards of 10% of the population of that town. That's got to be a drain on the local infrastructure and services and everything. And why? And as a quick follow-up to that, why is there such a big push for that type of housing? But it seems like in zoning, you know, restriction or easing of zoning restrictions, whereas, you know, to try to build a little 5-unit lollipop on a nice, you know, 3-acre parcel of land seems like it's a 5-year project to get off the ground. That might get one question.
So I probably talked about the impact in Norwood being minimal, but each community is a little different. So in Norwood's case, our census population is 31,000. Our daytime population is about 70,000. There's just a lot going on. 600 more units in Norwood is not really going to make much of a difference. We also, as I said, have 5,500 rental units in town. If you drive through South Norwood, it looks like most of the other mill towns in the state. It looks like Fall River and New Bedford. Windsor Gardens, as I said, is a 900-unit apartment complex. I don't know if anyone else has a complex that large, or even does Sharon even have 900 rental units town-wide. So for us, it's not going to be that big of an impact because we're sort of built out to handle what we have, at least in Norwood. As for the smaller projects where it's 3 or 4 units on a lot, look, I don't know why people are always opposed to housing, and some people don't want big complexes. Some people hate 3 or 4 little units. I do think a push by the state to encourage ownership by making condo development easier would be a better process. At least in Norwood, we could convert a lot of our rental units over to ownership. Part of the problem is the funding for it, or I should say the financing for it. If I go to build a 180-unit apartment complex, it's a lot easier to get a loan from a bank to do that than a 180-unit condo complex. Creating those additional paths to ownership is going to be a better way to actually reduce the overall cost of housing, let people build some equity. I mean, let's face it, the $700,000 houses we have all across eastern Massachusetts are never going to be $400,000. That's never going to happen. We're not going back to that. You might be able to create smaller ownership opportunities where you can build equity and then get into it. But the smaller redevelopment, I mean, a lot of that comes down to neighborhoods. Some of it's NIMBYism, where it's, yeah, sure, you know, accessory dwelling units are great, just in the street over, but not in my neighborhood. But everyone's a little different.
Yeah, the big frustrating thing as a planner who spent years talking about housing, and now as a person who's got a 21 and a 25-year-old, and I live in my house that I bought in 1994, and my mortgage is low. It's great, but it's 3,600 square feet with a pool and an acre of land, and I mean, awesome, right? But I'm alone there, and I'm ready to move on. I want a small property. I'd rather not go to a condo. I'd rather go to a 5,000 square foot lot, with a little 1,000 square foot house with a garage. And I don't want a lot, but we cannot build it. And like our zoning will not allow, and the residents will not allow small lot development. And I do agree, we were just talking about this whole push, if you build it, the prices will come down. Well, that sounds like trickle-down economics, trickle-down housing. So like, how many units are we gonna build to actually see housing prices go down? I just don't think we're gonna see it. So it's a different product we need. Like, I know there's so many seniors and then, empty nesters like me, ready to move and ready to go somewhere. And, 5 years ago, I might have stood a chance. And now after COVID and now the Cape is totally done, we can't go anywhere. So I don't see any political change. I don't see an appetite for anybody to tackle this, but I agree. I think we need different housing. We need the missing middle. And I've met with developers during my conversation on housing. I had them come in and do a panel. And basically, a developer needs to make 3 times what he or she paid for the lot. So that's why, these acre lots that are selling for $300,000, they basically need a $900,000 house to make their money, or to make what their projections are. So unless we change the zoning, it is not going to change, and we are not going to change the zoning. So it's really frustrating. So I don't know what we're going to do. So we're just going to throw all these apartments up. And to the point of that is, we are worried. Like, we're going to lose grants if we don't pass the MBTA Communities Housing. But if we put 1,152 units out on Route 1, and say we have 3,000 to 4,000 people living out there, we're already stretched fire department wise. We have 95 over here, and we have Route 1 over here. We need a substation sort of today, but we're making do without it. The minute you throw that many people in, now we have a substation we need. So what grants are going to offset that? But that's not something, we say that, but it's not, we don't also want to look the state in the eye and say, yeah, we don't need your grants. Like, so we don't want to play chicken with them, but we're very concerned about the long-term cost effects of the schools and all that. There's just so many.
Well, it's a shame because Foxborough never had the community realm. It was just a recent thing that it became a permanent.
Well, we would have been an adjacent, so you're right, we went from 768 units as an adjacent community to 1,152. So either way, and I've been trying to tell my residents that we were an MBTA community decades ago. This is not something that has anything to do with the commuter rail station, except those extra couple hundred, which are nothing to sneeze at, but I don't know that 768 are going to be built. I don't know that 1152 are going to be built. Even a couple hundred are going to be a bit of a challenge, although not quite the same. So
I don't think you should discount condominium living. I have one available.
Same price as my house, though. That's the problem.
I think that the effort to increase housing is a good one. I think it's much needed. And clearly, it's the governor's goal to do that. But I think in Canton, anyways, the MBTA communities law, Canton would build 1,500 units, but the way that I see that is, we're going to build 1,500 units, and these are going to be apartments, and rents in Canton are $3,000 plus. So the people that you're actually trying to house can't afford the new units. So I think that the intention is good. I think the strategy is probably not going to work the way the governor wants it to be.
I have a question. I know you touched on the closure of Norwood, and of course we're aware Brockton is soon to be opening, but what's been the impact on your EMS services in your town? Have they had to staff? Obviously their travel is much longer to get patients where they need to be, so just curious what that conversation has been.
Yeah, I think it's the same for all of us. It's been a huge impact.
Yeah.
In Canton, 70% of the patients that we transported went to Norwood Hospital. So all those patients have been diverted to other hospitals, and primarily the Good Sam Hospital in Brockton. We had an ambulance crew. We had a structure fire in Canton last week. The ambulance crew was at Good Sam Hospital, and they were there for 2 hours trying to offload a patient because there was no place to put that patient. So not only does it have an impact on your staffing, but it has an impact on your operations, a detrimental impact. So when I saw that Norwood Hospital was disheartening to say the least. But it's put a lot of pressure on our other medical facilities, the BI Needham, New Wellesley, Milton, and certainly Good Samaritan Hospital. And hopefully Brockton Hospital comes back in the summer to take a little of the pressure off, but it does have a big impact.
We've been spending a lot of time on this. Our fire department in fact, we just approved, the select board voted to approve one more position at the fire department overriding my budget, which I was fine with. I just couldn't do it, but because the ambulances, the amount of time that they are spending out of town. In fact, one of the stories is there was a fire in Foxborough and something else going on, and then there was an accident on 95, and we had to get Norwood to come. And they had to go all the way down 95, turn around, come back. So it was something like a 25-30 minute response time. Resulted in a fatality. So we are absolutely seeing the impact. Many times we end up with one firefighter in our station, which that was sort of the argument is we can only do so much with 3 ambulances. Unfortunately, Foxborough, which by the way we just got accredited Foxborough Fire is first in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, so take that. 3rd in New England, and so we have all paramedics who get tremendous medical care in town, but we are really struggling with this sort of desert. And I know our fire chief has been actively trying to see. We have the Brigham at Patriot Place, but you can't use urgent care as the way you use hospitals. So if there were some different model, we are fighting for that because while we wait for Norwood and wait for other solutions, we are struggling. And then if it's like a rush hour situation, when people want to go to Boston, because a lot of people don't want to go to some of these other hospitals, and they want to go to Boston, but then you're looking at like 4 hours out of town. So let alone the time out, but now we got the miles, we're burning through our ambulances. So it is probably one of our #1 critical situations we're dealing with.
So ditto for Walpole. I can just tell you, our ambulances are getting beat up, as you might expect, running to Brockton, potholes, there's accidents. I think an ambulance used to cost about $250,000. I went out right after COVID, they cost about $450,000. Now they're up to $600,000 for an ambulance.
And how long do you wait for it?
Yeah, 1 or 2 year wait time. Same on a fire engine, and they just take a beating. And we can't hire firefighters and police officers. I don't have as much of a problem with police officers hiring them. Firefighters, we've had a couple. We just leave the postings up because I always tell my fire and police chiefs, hire one more than I actually have budgeted, and I'll just white knuckle it. Make sure but I can't even do that at this point because I just got noticed that last week you guys retiring kind of out of the blue. They just get burnt out, and we run a 8-man minimum, but we keep it up to 10. I've budgeted for 11 on all 4 shifts, and that's nothing compared to Norwood. But I still can't even fill those positions. There's not enough people. No offense to other towns. We poach Norwood, or Norwood poaches us. It happens, but we also rely on Norwood and Foxborough and Sharon for the mutual aid. And we're always coming in and getting everyone's back because we're all dealing with the same situation.
I'll just add on, same problem for us, but I'll pick up on what Jim said in terms of recruitment. I'm in negotiation right now with both my fire and police. Pull up the contracts from all the peer towns, they're all bargaining against each other. If you don't pay our guys more money, they're gonna go work here, they're gonna work there. No one wants to do the work. The model where you thought of firefighters 15, 20 years ago, being carpenters, plumbers, and doing fire for 2 days a week, and health insurance and a pension are over. The younger generation wants time off, they're beating me up with 3 years at the job, want 4 weeks off. I run 8 people to run my ambulances. I don't have extra guys, so it's automatic overtime. So every minute I give somebody a day off for, it costs overtime and time I have to fill the same shift. And they're sitting at the table, we want more vacation, and then they're whining about how they're burned out from working overtime. It's unbelievable. And on the police side, I can tell you, we hired 2 laterals because we're having trouble finding young recruits. Moved from other departments. They stay a couple of years. One left for a sheriff's department, not yours. Another one we took for the BC police force, who's retiring there at 20 years. He went somewhere else. I had a woman we promoted a sergeant, stayed a Boston police officer, firefighter. She moved to Devon to be closer to her boyfriend. I mean, the idea is that it's sort of you get in, you hang out, you do your 20 years, you get a pension or over. I think the folks that are going into these professions have the same attitude as other people, thinking they have 6, 7 careers over their work life, as opposed to this is the one. Our whole model in public service is built on longevity, defined benefit pension. That's gonna have to change at some point, and we're seeing, just like Jim is in recruitment. I have 4 vacancies right now in police. And in negotiations, the most senior officer, he has 30 years, he's like waiting to retire because he just got divorced and needs to build up his pension. He should go now. He had to work a midnight shift because he got ordered in. I said, how is that possible? You're the most senior guy. He said, well, where'd you work from? So we're seeing it. It's a real issue.
Just on the recruitment side, I mean, we're obviously, Norwood's facing the issue with Norwood Hospital closure. I mean, we're a 10 square mile town. Our ambulances used to travel a mile to pick somebody up, half a mile to the hospital and back, and now we're driving into Boston. On the recruitment issue, if you think back 20 or 30 years ago, municipal health insurance and state health insurance was like a great thing. We've had laws since the 50s that we have to provide good health insurance. That's not the draw that it was 20 or 30 years ago, especially when you look in town where, first of all, in Massachusetts, we had our Romney care and then we had Obamacare. So there aren't full-time decent jobs out there that don't have health insurance in Massachusetts. That might happen in some other states. It doesn't happen here. I have cops who have partners that work at Moderna. They work at FM Global. The idea of health insurance is not even a question anymore. So we've sort of lost that advantage in terms of municipal and state employment. The pension system we have is good. Municipal employees don't pay into Social Security, but you need to put your time in. So I joined the pension system at 30. If I want to max out, I have to work till I'm 68. So that draw isn't necessarily there anymore where people want to do 10 or 15 years in one career and then move on. 10 years of the pension system gets you nothing. I think when I vest at 10 years, if I could leave, retire at 68 with a pension, and I think it would be like $12,000. So it's just not, it's not there anymore unless you're willing to commit the entire time to doing it. And it is a bit of a generational shift that it used to be with firefighters. They had their second jobs. Cops, they'd come on 22, 23, 24. They wanted to work 100 hours a week and they'd make all their money in their first 8 or 10 years. They talk about work-life balance now. It's like, no, you guys need to work 80 hours a week. That's what the system is based on. And then it still is an industry. It's still a little ridiculous that we basically hire people and then have to send them to all of their training. If I hire somebody who's not a paramedic and they haven't gone to the fire academy, by the time they spend, what's the fire academy, 6 months? Is it 12 weeks? 12 weeks. So you have 12 weeks at the fire academy, and then I got to send them to paramedic school, which is a year or two, depending on where you are. And then you got to learn how to actually do your job. So I'm hiring somebody, paying them their salary and benefits. It could be 3 years before they can actually do the job I need them to do, based on the timing of when they can go to the academy and when they can go to paramedic school. Because I can't hire you on Monday and just send you on Tuesday. And then they're going to learn how to do the job. So we're hiring people, and it could be 8 years before you're good at what you do at a basic level. Police, it's the same thing. If you don't take a lateral, you go through the police academy, it just takes so much time that we're hiring people, and it's years before they can actually do the job. And then if they leave, it's terrible. So statewide, there needs to be something different for police and fire where we can actually go to hiring people ready to do the job. We're one of the last industries where it's come on in, and in 3 years after training, you can finally do the job I need you to do today because I'm down people today. But it's a challenge beyond the fact that a good economy is making recruitment challenging in general. And just, one other point of the recruitment, you can get special legislation, but we generally don't hire cops or firefighters after 35. So we have a very narrow pool that, you can transfer after that age and you can get special legislation, but it's a very narrow pool and window. And when somebody decides they want to be a cop or firefighter, if they've never done any of that training, they want to make a career transition, it's years to make that transition before we want to hire you, and then you got to go through years of training. It's a tough backlog.
Karen, I'm guessing you're going to change the subject.
Absolutely. So my question is for the panel. With all of the plans for development, new development, housing, what conversations and planning is there around transportation, shuttles for the communities, and to lower the traffic by providing services? And if any of the funding that are available, can they be put in towards transportation?
We're doing no planning. I hate to, we're barely, I guess for my sake, we'll get to that, but with 1,152 units, we don't think they're gonna be built. Famous final words, you can all laugh at me in a year or two. And I think we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So for right now, we're more just like getting through town meeting, figuring out what we're doing, and then, because the location of our district is not really that convenient to the train station, so there will absolutely need to be considerations. I think I'm personally planning on the private sector to handle that. You know, it's part of the, you know, they're gonna have to attract people to that site and sell them on providing their own shuttles and whatnot, so.
But how about encouraging them to work with?
Well, we don't have anything in our bylaw,
Right.
because we can't, everything has to be by right, so it will not have a lot of teeth. But I would imagine from a market perspective, if you're almost a half a mile from the train station and you're across Route 1 from the train station, they're going to have to, the apartment complex is going to have to provide the shuttle. I don't think the town wants to get into paying for that or worrying about that yet.
I can say in Walpole and the projects that have gone on in the downtown, basically, it's like, hey, you're downtown, you're close to the MBTA, there you go. It's not our problem to basically say, we need a shuttle up to Big Y or down to Patriot Place or whatever. But I also know that the zoning board basically says, okay, we'll give you 1.2 parking spaces for every apartment. That doesn't work. And I'm seeing them overflow parking in the back of our town hall from our fire station. Business owners are complaining to us that there's no access in the front of the building. So it's like a catch-22. Yeah, we want to reduce and encourage you to take the train and everything in, but they're not doing it. And I can tell that a lot of the snow, during snow plowing events, we get complaints like, oh, they're parking in my spot, that's only supposed to be in, why isn't the police doing enforcement out there? We're trying to balance it and everything. We're not required, as Paige said, to make sure they have shuttles or whatever, but it's a valid point. But
I'll just say sort of a couple things on it. One, just so everyone knows, nothing we will do will ever reduce traffic. And I tell all the residents in Norwood that, gee, traffic's bad downtown, it's never gonna change. The volume of people on the road is not fundamentally going to change, and even if we had billions of dollars, I don't think we can fundamentally change that. It's also the sign of a good economy. You have a hard recession and people stop working and people stop commuting, you will see traffic start to go down. Norwood, again, we're the little city in a suburb, we're very dense. Monday morning hits and it's just nuts in Norwood. We're looking at sort of services around the margin as an example. We run a senior medical transport program. Now most towns have a senior bus that goes around, but we actually have 3 vehicles that take seniors to medical appointments. It's more of a social program. Seniors need help getting to those appointments because the taxi system has sort of collapsed and it was too expensive prior to that. People can't afford to take an Uber 2 or 3 towns over, at least not out in the suburbs. So there's a recognition of that, but in Norwood, again, where we're unique, we already have thousands of units within easy walking distance. The easy walking distance of our transit stations. The people taking the T in has gone up for a long time after COVID. It was dead, but pre-COVID, you know, you drive around Norwood at 6 in the morning, and I joke it's like The Walking Dead. It's all these people sort of slumbering towards the train station, half awake. And we're kind of back to that now. If you're by either of the train stations, it's people sort of slumbering back in. That being said, the whole idea of 3As, we need more housing, let's put it around transit. Well, what's the purpose of that transit? To get people into Boston, except people aren't working in Boston the way they used to, and I think we've all realized you don't need to go into Boston 5 days a week. People going into Boston 5 days a week benefits Boston, it doesn't benefit Norwood, so I could care less. I'd rather everyone work remotely. Yes, there's a negative impact on Boston's commercial market and their restaurants, all that. I don't care, I'm not interested in the city of Boston's problems, I'm interested in Norwood's problems. So we're trying to cluster transportation around, try to develop around transportation, which makes sense, but people are working from home, and I would think that for a lot of industries, some portion of work from home or remote work or shit is gonna be permanent, so it's really changing the need, and it's easier if it's all one or all the other, but Moderna is, as an example, they have a lot of reverse commuters coming from Cambridge. To, I think, Jim's point, it's like, sounds like a problem. Moderna's a rich company, I ain't gonna pay a dime to help Moderna's problems. Same thing with FM Global, if they said, gee, we're having trouble getting employees from, you know, point A to point B, I think I would tell FM Global, sounds like a nice problem to have, you've got billions of dollars, leave us out of it. Not that we're not supportive of transportation, I know we're joining with a couple other towns in a great program to look at some local shuttle services, but with the market changing and so many more people working from home, a friend of mine works for Nisuni, which is a digital tech company out of Boston, and he used to always work 1 day a week from home, pre-pandemic. Pandemic hits, they start going from home, start working from home. After about a year and a half, the company said everyone's gonna start coming in 3 days a week. So Ed dutifully starts going to work 3 days a week for about a month, and then he realized that nobody's in the office. He just went back to working from home 5 days a week. 2 years later, nobody said anything to him. So I think that we've got to settle out what the future of work is to really decide what we can do with transit and where we're going to get people to and from.
And then the whole MBTA problem, don't even get us going on that.
Yeah,
I mean,
let's crowd people around a transportation system that is a failure.
Like the Foxborough service, you know, I mean, which comes first, the chicken or the egg, but the schedule is horrendous. It was good for a little while, but Franklin and Walpole had a problem with it because more people use that line. I mean, the way we were told back when we were doing the commuter rail is the sticking point is up at South Station. So like, we just can't get more trains in there when we need them in and out. So, you know, we're gonna maybe, I mean, I don't think it'll really happen, but to that point, the whole vision is to bring everybody to our Foxborough station, have them jump on that train and head into Boston. Well, the schedule doesn't work, and then if you did get a schedule that worked, I'm not sure South Station could accommodate it. So it's kind of an interesting, you know, let's throw it up in the air and see what happens, and that kind of is where we feel like we are right now.
I think you'll see local and micro transit grow, but I don't think we're there yet. I think it's 5 to 10 years out once we all realize that, you know, we're in whatever the future of work is, and that Boston is no longer the permanent site of all work in the Commonwealth. And candidly, if we're really looking to address housing and traffic, the state should be pushing to move their own offices out to Worcester, Springfield, and Pittsfield, and the state should be pushing companies to say, look, can you locate in Worcester, can you locate in Springfield? At some point with, you know, Norwood's fully built out, not every community is, but we can't continue to put people in the same area and say, if we just reshuffle everything better, magically transportation will go away and housing costs will abate themselves and everything will work out fine. We have to look at ourselves as one Commonwealth, and we need to look at Worcester as more of a sister city to Boston. We need to look at Springfield, what businesses can locate out there, what state agencies can locate out in Springfield, free up space in Boston. I don't want anyone leaving Norwood, but you know, the state can kick its offices out to Springfield. Because if you think about pre-pandemic, if you lived in, like I love the Pioneer Valley where Amherst and Northampton is a great area. I'm not commuting into Boston 5 days a week. Maybe I could commute into Boston 2 days a week if I can live out there. Or you have some companies that say, we don't need that Boston address, let's locate in Worcester, let's locate in Springfield, let's locate out in the Berkshires, which has an overall economic benefit for the Commonwealth, that the poor areas of the state that tend to be a drain on resources now have some opportunity.
And then just lastly, because this is a topic near and dear to my heart, I mean, the 15 units per acre is clearly designed to build housing that doesn't rely on the vehicle. You know, maybe one parking space, you know, not two. And out here, you know, in Foxborough anyway, you really can't live in Foxborough without a car. You could try. I mean, we have Got2Go, and we have, definitely it's improved. But, you know, if you want to get to a doctor's appointment, or you want to take a child to soccer, or you know, you missed this bus, you're going to need a car, and chances are you're going to need two. And we're having that same thing where we're like, only one parking space per apartment, but then all our streets are lined with cars, and we're now thinking about where to put overflow parking for snowstorms. And so it's that one size fits all, I think, that's the hardest. And, you know, out here in the suburbs, it is just not realistic to think that you're going to have no household, or even, you know, you can maybe share one car, but that's still going to be a challenge in Foxborough if you have, you know, multiple people in your household.
All right, last one, and then we're up against time, so quick.
Sure. What are the towns doing to accommodate EV charging stations for electric cars?
Timely question. So Canton's been installing EV charging stations at some of its public properties, and currently there are 2 municipal parking lots that are being proposed that will include EV charging stations. So working with Constellation Energy, for example, to take advantage of a lot of grant money and money available to the utility companies to really mitigate the costs of EV charging stations, which are substantial. So as long as those programs continue to exist, I think that more EV charging stations will be generated.
Same for Walpole, basically. We're looking at one at our library and 2 or 3 other municipal parking lots. Just get them added in there through the incentive program for local campus.
We've installed infrastructure at town offices, community center, looking at it at one of the soccer fields, and also at the MBTA station. The T owns some of the parking lot, we own some, so it's a matter of, you know, being able to locate on town land. But we've already installed infrastructure or close to opening EV stations all over town.
We haven't done much. I have to admit, I get inundated with emails trying to get me to sign up for this, and I'm just so busy just doing 2 jobs and getting up to speed that I just can't right now. But it's something we do need to do. But then my director of human services, he's a Tesla driver, so now I'm learning that I have to be very careful of what I pick, because there's the level 1 or whatever, and then the level. So I just haven't had time to take it on, but it is something we'll need to look at.
I know 3 years ago, I think we had no publicly available charging stations. We now have them in 4 different municipal lots. And as we're redoing any of our municipal buildings or our municipal lots, we're including the infrastructure to install them, because there is a cost to doing it. Even though we own our own electric company, we can't just go and dump them everywhere. So we're expanding. We went from 0 3 years ago to I think we have maybe 10 publicly available charging stations. We're requiring larger site plans to include some EV charging. I think both Moderna they have a ton up there, but we required some as part of their site plan. The hospital's going to be required to have 10, and the parking garage that FM is building, I think will have 10 or 20 required as part of that, to make sure that we're trying to cost shift some of that burden onto the private sector. I mean, cities and towns 130 years ago didn't build gas stations. So there's a thought that, well, we don't also need to build EV charging stations. There needs to be a market solution. But recognizing that we want them, we put them in municipal lots. We've been redesigning our buildings to make sure we can accommodate more EVs in the future. And we're making sure that with the private sector, as they build and redevelop, we're saying, hey, if you're putting in 100 spaces for this building, you need to have some EV lots. And we haven't found a problem with any of our companies actually wanting to do that. They want to do it. It's just deciding what's that right sweet spot. I know from a municipal, just briefly on a municipal fleet perspective, we're probably going to convert later than some other businesses. We don't use in Norwood, for instance, fleet vehicles, like for inspections, they use their own vehicles. So I really have police cars, DPW vehicles. We're starting to bring in some of the Ford Lightnings, the pickup trucks, but I can tell you that for my police fleet to go all electric, I'm going to need more vehicles. So in terms of that sustainability argument, we really got to have a conversation of, well, for this to work for me, I need the backup infrastructure to be able to always charge hooked up to a gas generator. And instead of 15 cruisers, I'm going to need 19 cruisers. At this point in time, is it worth doing that when I know I'm going to need to spend more and it's more material? So we're converting slowly, but we don't use a lot of pool vehicles. It's also getting harder to find all electric in fleet vehicles off the state list. We're supposed to buy hybrid vehicles. We cannot find hybrid SUVs available within a reasonable amount of time for what we need to purchase. So it's like, well, what do we do? Do I not buy vehicles? Do we just let the fire chief drive around in his own car? We need to buy vehicles at some point.
All right. We're going to wrap it up, but I mean, covered a lot: healthcare, transportation, public safety, you name it, staffing. A lot of issues to deal with. We appreciate the work that you're all doing. It's great to have such forward-thinking leaders in each of our communities, and we really thank you for all the work that you do and for spending some time with us here today. I want to thank all of you for being here as well, asking some great questions. I hope you learned something. I know I picked up a few things that I was unaware of. But also want to mention a couple of coming events for the Chamber. There's some information on the tables out there. March Madness starts soon. The bracket selection will be next week. If you're interested in basketball in the NCAA tournament, join our bracket challenge. It's a 50-50, $20 to get in, and the winner wins half of what we collect. A lot of fun, makes it interesting. And then the big event that's coming up is the return of our tasting event on April 10th. We haven't done this in the last 4 years because of COVID, but we're bringing a lot of the area restaurants, including Tessie's, will be participating. Some great restaurants are going to be there, and beverage providers as well over at Blue Hill Country Club. It's really the best event, I think, that we do, and we encourage all of you to get a group of people together, make it a night out. It's really a lot of fun, so I hope you can join us. So with that, thank you all again for being here, and have a great day.